Check the description for the following discount codes.
What we have here today is the entry level offering from Asetek Sim Sports. We've already looked at their Forte wheel and wheelbase, which is in the background here. You might be able to just see it. Their Invicta wheelbase and pedals. Today we're looking at, as I say, what they call their entry level. Now this comes as a bundle. So we're going to be comparing it to other bundles from the likes of Fanatic from a sort of value for money point of view. The price is €1,134 before VAT. So that would be nearer sort of 1350, 1360-ish with VAT. So whilst this is an entry level offering, and you do get, you know, a very solidly built wheelbase and pedals, it's certainly not cheap. You know, there are much cheaper options out there. Obviously, you could go as cheap as the Logitech, for example, if you wanted to. But if we're talking at least direct drive with a load cell brake, you'd be looking at things like the CSL DD from Fanatic, or you know, the whatever Motor R8, I think it is, for their 8Nm one. And then there's a whole lot of others as well coming out the woodwork now. Camus are bringing stuff out as well. So certainly they are all much cheaper. Now, most of those that I've just mentioned, in fact, all of them do have lesser torque on the wheelbase. This is a 12Nm wheelbase, whereas, for example, the CSL DD can only put out 8. 8 to 12 is a reasonable jump. We can't really compare it to their DD1 because that's 20Nm. That's an 8Nm jump from this to that, whereas from the CSL DD to this, it is only 4Nm. So it's as close as you can get, you know, from another mainstream manufacturer like Fanatic to compare. So, you know, looking at, before I go into the details here, we'll just do a little price comparison. So there's two sort of bundles from Fanatic that we can compare to this La Prima bundle. One is their CSL DD Ready to Race McLaren Elite bundle. This comes with the Elite V2 pedals. There isn't a clutch there that we don't have here with this La Prima. But again, I'm trying to match things as closely as I can. Same as with the torque for the wheelbase. This is only an 8Nm wheelbase. You know, the La Prima here is a 12, and of course it can be upgraded to 20, which I'll talk about later on. Or is it 18? I'll check. Anyway, the price for this is €800, including VAT. So it's a sort of a €550 difference. So if you wanted like another sort of ready to race package like Fanatic describe it, there are cheaper options out there like this one that does give you a load cell brake, you know, an 8Nm wheelbase, and the McLaren GT3 wheel. Their other offering would be the CSL DD F1 Premium Ready to Race bundle. So different steering wheel, arguably a nicer steering wheel as well. But these are the CSL pedals, load cell, I might add. So they're not quite as premium in some respects as the pedals from the other package, but this is €769.85, again including VAT, very close in price to their other package, and again still sort of €550, €170 less than the La Prima. But the difference here is not just about the newton meters of torque produced by the wheelbase. The overall quality of the Asetek stuff is so much higher than the quality of the Fanatic stuff. Not so much the wheelbase, because the little CSL DD wheelbase is a very nice wheelbase. I have no complaints about its quality or construction, but things like the steering wheel and the pedals, when we compare to these Fanatic packages, there is a night and day difference. They just don't even compare. You know, this is the entry level from Asetek, and it's still leagues above the Fanatic McLaren wheel or their F1 wheel. So whilst the price difference is 550-ish euros, you're getting a lot more quality for your money with the Asetek stuff. And if you can afford that extra money, because it is quite a bit of extra money, leaping up from sort of high sevens to mid 13s is a big jump. And if your budget doesn't allow it, then go with someone like the Fanatic offerings. You know, not everyone can afford to spend over €1,000 to get themselves up and running in sim racing. But if you can, then this I would recommend this bundle over any of those. First and foremost for the quality, but secondly for the upgradability. This wheelbase, the La Prima wheelbase, is exactly the same from a hardware point of view as what the Forte wheelbase is. It's just they remove some of the features. You notice there's no USB hub at the back there. There's not an additional port for the emergency stop button, and there's no LED strips at the top there. But the motor inside is still the same motor as what's in the Forte one that's in the background here. And it can be upgraded at a later date to produce the extra torque the Forte does, and you can add the LEDs, the USB ports, the emergency stop ports. So you can literally come into the ecosystem with their entry-level stuff, and then if you decide, I want more torque, I want some RGB on my wheelbase, you can do it. And this is the only sort of manufacturer that allows you to do that. And of course, we've got this excellent quick release system on here. I'll put a clip up of me removing the wheel and putting it on a few times now just to show you. But as you can see, it's super simple. You just squeeze the little lever at the top and you slide it on and off. And there's no play in this mechanism, there's no flex. It's all completely solid, you know. And the same goes, you know, for this wheel itself. There's just no, you know, I think they say it's injection molded carbon fiber composite. You know, it's rock solid. It's no less solid than their Forte wheel. It just doesn't look quite as fancy, you know, and it has, you know, a few less buttons, you know, and not so many LEDs, not so much RGB. But aside from that, the quality is still the same. And this is what Asetek's sort of methodology is. Don't reduce the quality. Make everything of the same materials, you know, and the same goes for the pedals here as well. Make everything of the same materials, the same quality, but just remove features, i.e. in this instance, this isn't a hydraulic, you know, brake pedal, but you can upgrade it. Remove flashy stuff like, you know, RGB and additional USB ports built in. Things that not everybody needs and that literally have almost no effect, you know, on your racing, aside from obviously the difference between a load cell brake and a hydraulic brake. But again, that's feel rather than performance. And, you know, load cell is the standard. You'll get a very good muscle memory for that. There's no issues there. With these pedals, again, they focus on having very short travel in their brake pedals because that's how they believe race cars should feel. By default, these pedals do have very little throw in them. I'll put a little clip up now of me showing the amount of travel with the softest setup, which is actually my preference because it does come with a couple of elastomers. So you can see here just how far it moves. It still isn't particularly far. So if you're not a fan of short travel brake pedals, then you may not like this. You'll also see in this clip me operating the accelerator. And it's one of the things I mentioned when I reviewed their Invicta pedals is that the stop for the accelerator is very noisy. It's a hard mechanical stop. It could do with just a little rubber sort of bumper there to soak up that noise, because if you're somewhere where noise is an issue, maybe you're keeping the missus happy, maybe the kids are asleep, maybe you live in an apartment, a flat, neighbours, etc. It's quite a loud clonk as the accelerator, you know, hits the end of its travel, which is something you do a lot in sim racing. But I mean, it's easily fixed with like a pack of round rubber, you know, little feet off of Amazon for 99p. So it's not, you know, it's not a deal breaker by any means. If it bothers you, put a little rubber foot on the end of there and it will prevent that mechanical sort of knock as it comes to a stop. So yeah, what have we done? So I've shown you the wheel, you know, in sort of detail. You can see, and I was about to say you can feel the build quality. You can't, but I can. There's quite a weight to this as well. It's the tried and tested quick release from Asetek, which is an excellent quick release. The paddles feel great as well. Again, we call this entry level, but obviously the pricing isn't entry level, so everything should be good, and it is. And again, as I say, they're not reducing the quality. You know, the buttons, the rotaries, everything is still just as good, just as solid as what it is on their Forte wheel. They haven't reduced the quality at all. And these buttons, these rotaries, these funkies, they are all very nice quality. So no complaints there whatsoever. The sort of rubberized grip feels perfectly fine. I have no complaints with that. There's not even any sort of flex, you know, in the rubberized parts of the handle, which is something you often get, especially as they're open at the bottom, but there just isn't. So really nicely made wheel. Again, just the same as what their Forte one is. So yeah, no complaints about the wheel whatsoever. Obviously, I have no complaints about the wheelbase. These Asetek wheelbases are by far the smoothest and most detailed direct drive wheelbases I've ever used. It's the same 4,000 points of resolution per rotation. So for every 360-degree rotation of the wheel, that's split into, did I say 4,000? That's split into 4 million points for super smooth and super accurate force feedback. You know, it's honestly, it is just the smoothest. People are going to go, oh, Carl, you're a fanboy. I'm not a fanboy of anything, but if someone hands me something that's decent, I'm going to tell you it's all decent. And these wheelbases are by far the nicest I've used. I had the Simucubes here only a month ago, maybe, and took a retrospective look at those in 2023. And yes, they are lovely and smooth because essentially we've got the same technology in here, but these have improved upon that base design, refined it, and really you got just an overall better experience with the Asetek than you do with the Simucube stuff, even if it just comes to, you know, the wireless wheel connectivity, the quick release, for example, you know, ignoring things like the extra USB ports, USB-C ports I might add, rather than USB-A as well. So they're really keeping things current with technology, moving forward. You know, there's no sprung bungee cables wrapped around here to have your wheels on and things like that. So, and you know, they do a quick release, which I do have one of here now to look at, or two of. So you'll be able to use your aftermarket wheels, like me with my Sparco Rally wheel, and it just clips straight on without any issues. So that's great. So yes, the wheelbase is super smooth, it's super detailed. 12 Newton meters of torque here with the La Prima, upgradable to the output of the Forte, along with all the LEDs and other functionality. So just nothing to complain about at all. Mounting wise, you've got T-nuts in channels on the bottom, which you can use to mount to one of their mounting plates, and then, you know, for a horizontal setup, you can also front mount them by removing the 4 bolts at the front and using a traditional front mount. So plenty of options there to mount it. It's a heavy old thing to mount it just how you would a lot of other direct drive wheelbases. Obviously we don't have a clutch here, but the clutch is separate, so should you need a clutch, if you're like me and you like to use an H-pattern shifter, you can. The pedals have the usual range of adjustment here. You can adjust their travel using these thumb screws here. You can adjust the stop at the back of the accelerator there, and as I mentioned earlier, the load cell has 2 different elastomers that you can change out, and you can set a preload and travel using these here. There isn't any sort of up and down adjustment on the pedal arms, but the faces can go up and down 1 notch on those screw there. So not hugely adjustable, but you know, there is some adjustment there. And as I say, there's no LED, again, entry level, so the LED strip is missing from here, but completely upgradable to the Invicta pedals. And these are lovely and smooth. There's no play, there's no wobble, there's no nothing. Everything's just machined and constructed really nicely, just like the Invicta ones are. And apart from that sort of knocking when the accelerator reaches the end of its travel, there's no complaints with these pedals either. You know, everything here, everything Asetek's going to be doing, they're putting a lot of thought into things, a lot of feedback from testers and reviewers, people like myself, which is great because the products that are coming out do seem to be, you know, focused and on point. Yes, at the moment there's not much in the way of wheel offerings, but we need to give it time. They're relatively new, you know, to the market, and better to bring out a few top quality items slowly than just flood the market with a load of half-baked products that aren't quite as good as they could be, you know, for example. So I have absolutely no trouble recommending this setup as your entry into sim racing if it's within your budget. The option to be able to upgrade, you know, the pedals to the hydraulic setup, the wheelbase, you know, from 12 Newton meters up to the, is it 18 or is it 20? Why can't I remember? I should really have a quick look just so that I know what I'm talking about. But to be honest, 12 Newton meters, in my opinion, is probably all most people will need. You know, having 18 the Forte is, and the Invicta is 27. Having 18 Newton meters of torque, or like 20 on my DD1, I never use anywhere near that amount of torque. And I don't think most people will. Some of you definitely will out there because you like really heavy steering, and that's absolutely fine. But I think for most people, the La Prima at 12 Newton meters will be plenty. And like I said in my review of the CSL DD from Fanatic, even at 8 Newton meters, I think a lot of people will be happy with a nice, smooth, detailed 8 Newton meters of torque for their sim racing needs. You know, maybe once you've had a go on someone that's got a bit more, maybe 12, you know, and there's particular cars that you drive that you might want to have that heavier steering, you might want it. But yeah, 12 I think is almost like a sweet spot for torque when it comes to direct drive wheels. But you know, it's personal preference. Anyway, enough of my waffling. We've covered the wheel, you know, the buttons, the construction, how it feels, the paddles, the quick release, that's all good. We've covered the wheelbase, its torque, its quick release, its upgradability, that's all good. And we've covered the pedals again, their build quality, their construction, and their upgradability. And again, everything here is good. So as a, you know, ready to race bundle to get you started in sim racing, if it's within your budget, I can definitely recommend it. And then the future upgrades as well, meaning you can buy wheels and not have to worry, will they fit the next wheelbase you buy because you want more torque or whatever. You can stick with Asetek, which is what they want you to do, of course. If it's not within your budget, then certainly look at other options like Fanatic, for example, or even Moser if you want to take a gamble there with their stuff. The stuff I had in for review over a year ago was pretty poor, but from what I hear recently, their offerings seem to be better. I haven't had anything in recent months to test, but that's what other reviewers are saying. So, you know, in fact, there's an awful lot of options out there these days. But yeah, this is one I can definitely recommend, so there will be links in the description. Yeah, as always, thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.